So many of you have probably seen me working on this forever, and I've decided to finally put my pedal to the metal and just try to go live every day until I finish, so you don't have to look at it or watch me work on it again. Now, as a smart person that I am, I chose to start this when I'm getting over a cold. So I sound a little funny, but be that as it may, I want to really get going on this and get onto new projects and start showing, start working on other stuff on these lives that we can all enjoy and learn from. Just get a little situated here so I can see what I'm drawing while you can all see on the feed. See how that looks. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just continue working on these trees. Maybe once I get over this cold a little bit, I'll pop up to the mountain, but I just want to start making some daily progress here so I can get on to some other projects that I have on the back burner. So the tree technique, if you've watched my how to draw forest tutorial, I'm just doing that over and over, and I've done this on a lot of lives. So I'll keep my description, I'll describe what I'm doing. Maybe not as elaborate as some of the other walkthroughs, but if you have questions, fire them off. Just my setup here. So here's the full drawing, of course. Here's the section I'm going to finish off over this time period. There's a photo of it there, but you can't really see it. And of course I have my little grid sheet of paper here, so I don't have to have my eyes traveling back and forth as much. So the goal today for the first day is I'm just going for a square a day. And so I'm just going to do this little square, nice small progress, and it should take me about 30 days. Maybe some days I'll do more than one, but so let's get to it. So as I do on all these, I'm just starting off with my first layer of lightest value. I'm starting to build the texture of this layer of trees here. I'm just getting a little situated. I need to fold this over, I think. There we go. That's good. I want my reference image to be as close as possible so my eye doesn't have to travel. That way, I don't have to work as hard as I go. So I'm just going to do a little, start building our texture. And if you've seen me do this before, it looks like scribbling, and that's because that's all it is. It's sort of controlled chaos here. And while I am trying to get, sort of close on the forest part of this drawing, I don't care if this is 100% exact. Whereas on the Mount Rainier part, that is where I want things to look exactly as the mountain is, because so many people know important details on the mountain. But for the forest, yeah, it's just sort of scribbling. We're going to layer our lightest to darkest value and really build in that texture, as you see throughout the rest of. Let me just pop out now that there's a lot more people on. So we're just layering it so we get this really nice texture where you just, there's no denying that it looks like a forest. Get those dark values and those little highlights popping out. But to do all that takes a lot of time. That is why I'm just committing to this live almost every day, because I need to be on to the next thing. Not that I want to rush it or anything, but I've been putting it on the back burner for my other drawing tutorials. And so for the last couple months, the last probably 3, 4, 5 months, I've only been working on this on the lives. So I just want to commit more to it. And working on it every day like I was before my channel started taking over, you can get in a lot more of a rhythm. And you can sort of go on autopilot once you get things going. Hey, Carrie, how's it going? Hola. So this is just a 2B pencil, and it's 0.3 millimeter lead, I believe. So it's super small. And people have asked before, why don't you draw larger? And I think that's just one of the things, for some reason I like to draw tiny little details, and maybe it's just because of the challenge of it, but Fabujas muy bien. I know muy bien is very good. Is that supposed to be dibujas? I think that's drawing. Dibujas muy bien. The detail is crazy. Thanks. Yeah, that's sort of a thing that I kind of my bread and butter. I always challenge myself to get into these intricate details, kind of to my own detriment in terms of like, you think it's going to be a small, quick project, and it turns into like over a year. Because I started this April, not of this last April, but the one before. But again, for the last like 5 months, I haven't been working on it every day in any sense. I normally go live at 10 in the morning. So this is a new time for me. My cat might go nuts running across here. She was getting the zoomies, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, the plan is just to do a square a day, slow and steady process. And some days I won't make it just because of work and other household commitments, but you know, it's just one of those the details, and committing to yourself to this amount of detail is just sort of that cumulative process of every day putting in the work and not rushing. So I'm just making little marks in the direction of the tree branches. And this is what I'm working on right here, but you can see it's just sort of a first layer. A lot of this, I would say probably, I don't know, 80-90% of this is going to get covered up, what I'm doing right now. But that's why you start lighter and then get darker, because you don't have to think as much right now. It's just that layering. And yeah, if you want to, there's a how to draw a forest tutorial that will go over everything in depth. And again, on these lives, I've worked on a lot of these squares, so you can see different sections of it, or maybe maybe in some other ones. When I don't have a cold, I explain it better, but it's just kind of scribbling and going pretty slow and being patient, getting into a rhythm. If you're not on a YouTube live, turn the music on and just kind of let it flow. And especially with these earlier values, it's better to, this is a 2H pencil, it's better to draw outside, to draw a little larger. These trees aren't really this big. And then when I get with the darker values, I'll shrink it into the correct size it should be. Because you can see up here, like this tree goes down into this tree, and then it disappears back into the forest here. But it's better to draw it a little bit larger, and then you can finesse as you go. And, you know, if I ever make a mistake, of course, we can bring our erasers in, and it's not too difficult to really fix anything. Yeah, so I'm just sort of jumping around here, filling in a little bit more than needed. But this is all kind of looking good, on the right track. It looks a little messy, but like with most drawings, you know, you just sort of finesse and then get everything looking good as you develop it further. All right, so that was a 2H. Now I'm going with a HB pencil here. So just getting a touch darker. And I'm just staying mostly on top. I'm going to make the same marks mostly on top of these 2H little marks that I've made. And just think these are, I'm developing the branch texture here. So these are just slightly darker shadows. Making tiny little marks. And after this, we're going to use the 2B pencil and really hone in and shape those trees. Because all these white areas, I'm leaving those white mostly because those are shadows. But once I go 2B pencil as dark as I go, and with that I can really carve in the trees and they really take shape. So patience, as you're probably seeing, patience is a key for drawing a super realistic, detailed forest like this. If you rush it, or if you make your lines too big, the trees aren't going to be able to, you're not going to be able to achieve all this detail. So the more patient you are, the better, the better your forest is going to turn out. Just tiny little dots, or tiny little marks traveling in the direction. I'm going left to right, because that's the direction our branches are sticking out here. And I'm mostly just using this reference image as, inspiration and matching the look in general. I'm not by any means going for 100%. Just kind of getting the vibe of what the texture looks like at this scale. Can I see what you have been doing? Yes. Here's the full. So I'm just continuing on these trees here. And this process turns, eventually what we're working on will look like these other trees, but it's a long process. So yeah, when the final layer, I do 3 layers, 2H, HB, and a 2B. And the 2B is where it starts to really come together and actually look like trees. I'll come right back. Thanks, yeah, stop by, pop in. I'll be live a lot of days in a row here, so if you don't come back, maybe I'll catch you another day. I can tell I haven't, I've been away too long. I'm not quite as in rhythm as I normally am when I'm doing this. I feel like a lot of whack here, but hopefully we find a good rhythm and pull this one off. I'm not too concerned. Because either way, thing about, you're putting in all this work, the majority of the illusion's already created, because when you see the rest of this, people already assume this is all a forest. So if you have little sections that you're not quite as happy with, they're not going to be noticeable because everything else you've put in all the work. So I'm not too concerned, but sort of like on all the edges, you know, you want to make sure you really nail those because those are so visible, as opposed to some of this middle. You nail the edges and people fill in the rest with their brains of what they're looking at. Not that you want to draw poorly in the middle, but I'm just connecting this tree up to this one that's coming down from the work we did last time. Make sure these overlap. These are two trees coming together, which doesn't really look like it now, but again, once we get the next layer on, we'll help it come together. The other thing with nature and trees, of course, and forests, you want to be really random. Random is good. You don't want to make it look like anything is drawn on with lines, because then people can see, you know, it takes people out of the illusion of the drawing. They can see how you did it, as opposed to just enjoying what you did. So, just doing these little dashes where it's not like I'm not making big lines, right? I'm just making little dashes. And then they come together to form this texture with different values and contrast. So that's pretty decent for the second layer. But you can see all I'm doing is scribbling. Okay, now we got 2B pencil. This is where I can get it to pull, starts to really take shape. And then we'll really finesse with erasers if we need it. This lead is a little thicker. It's 0.5 millimeter lead. But here I'm going to start filling in these shadowy areas in between the trees, and then also the deepest shadows on our branches, of course. And I like to, even though I use obviously mechanical pencils because they're sharper and I can get more detail, I like it when I sort of wear down, there you can see it, I wear this down to a flat part, because then it's just a little blurrier, my lines, but in a good way. If they're super sharp, then it kind of, when it's a little thicker and the lines blur together a little bit more, it pulls off the illusion of the texture a little better, because they sort of blend into each other. Because of course, from this scale, you're not gonna see the details as sharp as, like here. This sort of has a blurry look to it. You're not getting ultra sharp details. So with the pencil a little flattened out and dulled, those lines blend together, similar to how this printout version looks. And then that creates the texture more effectively for viewing. That was probably sounded a lot like gibberish, but I know what I meant, and I guess that matters. I like it a little blurred because it pulls off the texture better. But here's where I add a little extra pressure too. Let's see if you can see it. You can see it now. See, I formed this tree coming down. Here are the shadows around it. Here's the tree continuing down. And then it kind of disappears here into the forest, like the understory, and this other tree comes up. So if you're not happy on your layering your values, if you're not happy as you're going with your lighter values, just wait till you get to this final, your darkest layer and you're filling in all these shadows, that's where it starts to work. But even in these little shadowy areas, I just do little marks and dots, even though I could just pencil it all in. You still want to keep the scale of, there's trees back there, you just can't really see them. And doing little dots and marks, you can get little hints of that texture hiding in those shadows. Just carving out this tree now. There's a tree here and here that kind of come together. I feel like I just want to add a little. This is an eraser. Got Faber-Castell eraser, and then I sharpen it. Just want to add a little. Just little taps. Again, I'm essentially matching my pencil strokes with the eraser to put those branches back in. Just feel like I filled it in a little too much. Of course, going down the center of a tree where all those branches come together on the trunk, oftentimes that's going to be the darkest spot, but somewhat dependent on the trees, depending how many branches are on there. So I reference images can be, I always recommend using a reference image if you're doing realistic drawing, or if you're drawn outside, obviously, in the elements. Just pay attention. I'm back. Thanks for coming back. I've barely made any progress, but hopefully you can, from where you left, see a little bit more trees developing here. Okay, we got a few people. I'll just show people what I'm working on here. So I'm just developing these trees in this forest here. And my goal is to finish off this drawing over the next 20, 30 days and go live most of the time, because that will hold me accountable to actually do it. I've been slacking on it. Well, I've been slacking on working on this because I've been building the tutorials on my channel instead. So, not really slacking, but I have been wanting to spend more time on it. And this is one that I will frame and put on the wall somewhere. So it'd be nice to finish it someday. This is a photo of, this drawing is based off a photo I took of Mount Rainier at the Reflection Lakes area, if anybody's curious. It's a very popular area in Washington State. Hello, how's it going? Just forming these bottom trees. You can just see them barely popping up here, and then they'll continue down in this other square that I'll save for day number 2 of going live every day. You can see though, it definitely gets it gets sort of messy in here in that you have all these branches coming together, you know, it's not like you have, like when you're a little kid drawing trees and you draw a bunch of triangles. It's not that clean. And that's what we want to make sure we don't want it to be that clean, because that's not going to look like a real forest. But it does sort of turn into sort of like a jumbled mess, like right here. I have these 3 trees, and they kind of just turn into, you know, they kind of just fade away. But when you're, you know, it's just sort of, you want to make sure you're being representative of what it really looks like and not trying to make everything clean and nice. Because that'll just make it, you know, obviously look a little more fake. But that was a long way of saying it kind of just turns a little messy down here as these trees disappear into the woods. Just little dots, trying to get these darker shadows in here. Wow, how do you make this? Yeah, so I'm layering different. I layered a 2H HB pencil, and I'm on my final layer with a 2B pencil. And you just make little dots, and then eventually You know, I'm building the texture of this forest. And so just think of it as layering your lightest values to your darkest values. If you check out my how to draw a forest tutorial, I go over it in depth. And I've done it on some other lives as well. But we're just mimicking the texture of these trees here. But that's kind of a short synopsis of it. But if you want me, check out how to draw a forest for a step-by-step walkthrough. But I'm just sort of, with this last darkest value, I'm just finessing these trees as they sort of disappear into the back here. I also want to make sure that this tree right here kind of is in front of this tree. So I want to add little hints of that. When you get to this stage though, be really subtle with everything, with your eraser, with your pencil, just little taps. I like to have sandpaper nearby and I can clean off my eraser. See, I just sort of drag it, clean it off. That way it erases a little better. Just little taps. And also I like to use eraser because, again, as I mentioned earlier, it does sort of blend some things together, but kind of gives it a little bit of a blur, which is what you would see with your eyes from this distance. You're not going to catch super sharp details. So if you give them a little bit of a blur, super subtle though, you don't want to blur all your work away, but it can help pull off the illusion. Just doing some final little touch-ups here to match it toward closer to the reference image, but it's mostly done here. You can see we have our trees continuing down that sort of disappear into the, forest floor here, and then these new trees coming up. Maybe a little bit more work to do. Wow, this is so good. OMG. Thanks. Thanks so much. Here's the full, let me show you the whole thing here. So this is what I'm working on right now, but, you know, seeing it in small little snippets, the real impact is the full forest here. But thanks. Thanks for the kind words. Okay, so I think that's mostly good with the 2B. Just gonna do kind of what I was saying earlier. Little taps with this eraser. See, I'm rotating it so I can use the cleanest part of it. And then clean it off on some sandpaper. Just because that way it erases a little better because it's cleaner. But just little taps, sort of blend, because I think I darkened this side a little bit too much. Just want to add a little bit of, not highlight, but just a little bit of some brighter values in there. And the center of this tree is a little darker. But yeah, like a forest, it just kind of, you see the tops of the trees, and then as they come down and disappear behind these new trees, it just kind of turns into sort of mushy blobs, and I want to make sure I achieve that. Add a few little subtle, softer shadows down there. There we go. I think that's good for day one. Going live every day. 38 minutes. We finished that 1 by 1 inch square. But if I can focus, well, maybe let's do a little. Hold on a second. We're not done yet. There's a little texture I want to. So I clean this up a little. Not putting in all this work to just leave it, you know, to leave it and not be as happy as I want to be. Okay. Day one, going live every day. We finished 1 square. We got all these to go. We got all these to go. And then Mount Rainier drawing will be done. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you are so inclined. Have a good one, everybody.